Hello and welcome to this video demonstrating the ServiceNow software asset management capabilities, specifically for contract management, the association of contracts to procured software licenses over time, the review of upcoming software license and contract renewals and a renewal schedule or calendar, and executing a renewal workflow that's prescriptive and available out of the box on the ServiceNow platform. It's also highly configurable should that be required. My name is Umair Yusuf, and I am an advisory solution consultant with the IT Asset Management Business Unit at ServiceNow. So let's get started with the contract and entitlement. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create or import the software licenses that have been procured. For this example, we're going to focus on TechSmith Snagit as the product. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the license operations module, and we're going to go into software entitlements first. So we're going to create these entitlement records. So this is going to be a list of all the software licenses that this fictitious organization has procured over time. Licenses or entitlements can be created several ways. You can interact with a standard form where you fill in a couple of required fields and it automatically creates the record for you. Ideally, if you have a publisher part number or a manufacturer SKU, which would be available to you either directly from the manufacturer or through a reseller like a CDW, SHI, SoftwareOne, SoftChoice. You fill in the blanks. They hold a treasure trove of entitlement data on your behalf if you procure through them. So this information should be very, very quickly and readily available. You can also import in that data in bulk, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm just going to hit next. So this is a standard import document, and so I would recommend you download the template always, because the template parameters, attributes, and mapping fields may change. So always download a fresh template when you're importing in data, especially if you're moving from one ServiceNow release to the other. Speaking of which, we are on the ServiceNow Vancouver release. So I'm going to attach a file. But before I attach a file, I'm just going to open it up and show you what I've got in that import spreadsheet. We'll give it a second to open, and I'll move it over to the screen. So as you can see, very few records here as an example. So at minimum, I've got some part numbers from the manufacturer. So make sure that it is the manufacturer's part number and not the reseller or the VAR or the vendor's part number. This has to be coming from the software vendor or the manufacturer themselves. If I have the publisher product version edition, I can fill that in. But again, if I've got the part number, it saves me a whole lot of time populating these other fields, because our content library will be able to pick that up. We've got over 4 million SKUs that are mapped out in the library. PO number, this is optional. Ideally, if your ServiceNow platform and CMDB is going to be a book of record or even a book of reference, it would be valuable to keep some of these additional fields in here as well. Purchase rights, this is obviously important. You need to know how many licenses you've purchased and the cost that you've paid, unit cost. The license metric, so this is how the vendor measures the software product. So is it by user, by device? Again, if you've got the part number, it'll automatically populate these when we import them in. And then a start and an end date, right? So this is going to be a subscription period. You can define this as well. So it's going to be an annual renewal. And so this is going to be licenses plus maintenance. And there are various part numbers that are specific just to licenses. These ones are for the license as well as 1 year of maintenance. So I'm going to define that subscription period as well. If it's got an owner, a software owner, and that owner is in your ServiceNow user table, you can pop those names in here and it'll associate them as well. If you've got sub companies, various entities, locations, these are all optional fields as well. I've plugged in the department just because I actually have some of these departments created in my instance. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm just going to save that document. I'm going to close it, and then we're going to attach that. All right, so I'm going to select that entitlement import. So it's uploading the file. It's ready to go. So now I'm going to hit import. Right, so it's going to tell me that import's in progress, and tells me here that there were 4 rows processed. 0 rows were successful, 4 rows have errors. Okay, so I've got some errors that I have to take a look at. So I'm going to go into the status of the import record here. All right, so this is a summary of what's been imported. I'm going to click on entitlement import error. We can go in and start to correct these pretty quickly. Right, so import template customized, resulting in one or many fields being invalid. Let's open up this record here. So I didn't select an agreement type. So this is a required field. So we're going to say this is not an enterprise agreement. It's just a generic agreement. An enterprise agreement tends to apply to license terms where if you do go over the number of licenses that you've purchased during the term of the agreement, you're not considered to be non-compliant until you have the opportunity to true that up at near the anniversary of the agreement. That's typically what that refers to. And I'm going to hit import. Let's see if it fixes that. So it says, yep, successfully created software entitlement. So I'm just going to go and do that again for the other entitlement records that need review. So I'm just going to, you can bulk select items. So if you know that they are going to follow similar action, so I can select them in bulk. It's going to hit generic. We're going to update. Right, so it automatically updates them and shows me the alerts that those remaining records were done. So now if I go into my software entitlements and I do a search for Snagit, right, that's what I just created 4 entitlement records for. So I can see I've got 4. I had 1 record that was created prior, so it'll actually tell me where the data came from as well. It's aligned them to the department schema within the CMDB. So I've got these records, these entitlements, they're active entitlements, they're in use. And as you can see, if I just clicked on one of them, it's automatically associated to a model. It's automatically told me that it's a perpetual and maintenance. So I didn't plug this in myself. It picked that up directly from the part number. It also picked up the license metric. So it's a per user metric. It's obviously plugged in the rights, the unit costs, and the start and end dates that I had defined, as well as the total calculated cost based on the unit cost. We've got 4 sets of TechSmith license. What we're going to do is we're going to create a software contract for TechSmith as the publisher, and then we're going to associate these new licenses that we've purchased this year, and then we're going to renew that contract based on the renewal date that's coming up. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go into the contracts module. Just going to go into all contracts. This is a list of all the contracts that this fictitious organization owns. I'm just going to create a new record here. Right, so this is a software license contract. There's various types of models for software contracts. You can create additional models as well. This applies not just to software, but hardware and services as well. We're going to see if TechSmith is a vendor already in here. If they're not, we can create them. So I can go in here and I can create a new vendor. All right, so we'll just keep it simple. We're not going to have, we'll call it TechSmith Corporation. Right. We're going to give it a contract number, so we'll say test contract 001, and we'll give the contract a name. So we'll say TechSmith software contract. Very simple. We're going to give start and end date, and we're going to align the start and end dates to the time that we purchased the license. So if I remember correctly, from the time that we purchased it, this is what it should be. And so it's coming up for renewal on January 29th, 2024. We're going to give the contract approver to the asset manager. You can assign it to anybody in the user table. Yeah, just for fun, we'll give it a value. We'll say it's, I'm going to make an educated guess that it's, I don't know, let's say a $50,000 contract. Right? Okay, and I'm just going to submit this for review. So once the contract goes in for review, it'll obviously go to the asset manager because that's who I selected to make sure that the contract is correct. The dates have been plugged in. It matches what's on paper. So I'm just going to go find that contract that I just created. So that's this first one, the second one here. It's the one that we just created. It shows that it's under review. So I can always see at any given time what the life cycle state of my contract is. I can see who the people are that have been configured to approve this. I'm logged in as a system administrator, as you can see here. So I have permissions to accelerate some of this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say that this was approved. Right, so we'll just do approved here. So now that the contract is approved, you see it's moved into an active state. So this is an active contract. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the assets covered tab, and I'm going to go ahead and add the the licenses that we've just procured. So I can do this, several different ways. Just do a simple keyword search, which is what we're going to do here. So we're just going to look for TechSmith Snagit. Right. So these are the 4 that I want to add. So not the one that we retired. And I'm just going to do save. Right. So now I can see that I've got 4 of those entitlement records added to the contract, and I'm just going to go update. Okay. So again, it's an active contract, it's got licenses, and I can see that it's coming due for renewal within 30 days, right? So this is where your contract manager can interact with the contract records. What I've just showed you here is more of a classic view for contract management. If I go back to the software asset workspace, which is where we were working off of earlier, you can see the same thing right here within software contracts within this UI, so you don't necessarily have to leave it. You may not give the workspace access to your supplier manager or sourcing manager or vendor manager. They may still work off of the classic view because you may not necessarily want them to have access to all of the data here. But you could absolutely consider that as well. So if I wanted to see the Snagit contract here, so just type in TechSmith, and it'll come up here. So I can see the TechSmith contract is active, and it's again coming due within 30 days. I can also see the same thing within this renewal calendar view. So here I can see, here I am right now, January 2024. I'm midstream some contracts here. My Citrix contract just ended. I should have probably renewed it. So I can click on the contract. I can see some quick information about the contract. I can trigger a renewal workflow. We're not working off of Citrix. We're going to work off this TechSmith contract. So that's the one I'm going to click on. And I'm going to hit the renewal workflow. So what this does now is it's going to activate the out-of-box workflow for software contract renewal. It's got a series of tasks that have to be completed. The workflow is designed to be very close to best practice, the industry best practice. But again, this is highly configurable. We're not going to get into the configuration of a workflow in this video, but you can absolutely configure that to more closely align with some of the nuances that you may have in your organization. And when I say configuration, this is a low code to practically no code configuration where you're adding tasks, adding notifications, they're drag and drop icons within a very Visio-like flow type of experience or UI. You're assigning those tasks to various personas, either to groups or to users within those groups that are responsible to take care of certain tasks. But let's click on Renew. And it's going to ask me to confirm that I want to trigger the workflow. I say yes. And you can see it has now loaded the contract renewal request screen. So it tells me that this contract renewal is open now. I can see that there's a series of tasks that are going to start to populate. This is where your workflow design can get creative. The first task here is to build the renewal. It hasn't been assigned to anybody in this instance, but you'd obviously configure that. Perhaps your asset manager, perhaps the contract manager or the supplier manager would be responsible to actually build the new contract record in the system. And once their task is done, it'll go automatically to the next task. So let's do that. Let's simulate myself, let's say as a contract manager or a vendor manager for TechSmith. I need to build the renewal, right? So what I'm going to say is, we're just going to give it a description. We're going to say, it's going to be the new TechSmith contract for 2024. I'm not going to put in a description. It's not required. I'm going to have to put in a contract number. So we'll just say test contract 002. We'll give it a start and end date. So we'll say the new contract runs from 2024 January 30th, and it's going to lapse on the 29th of the following year. Let's see if we can get away with this information. It'll tell us if there's stuff that's missing. So it says that a contract approver is missing. So let's put in a contract approver. Let's just say the asset manager is the contract approver. It could even be the contract manager, supplier manager themselves, or their manager for that matter. But I'm just going to put in close task. Now what it does is it's going to show me that the first task is completed, and now I need to select some assets for the second task. In this case, it's asking me if I have any hardware or enterprise assets that I want to include in this contract. Doesn't really apply to the TechSmith supplier. But say you were looking at something like a Cisco software renewal, like a SmartNet renewal, for example. So you may want to associate your software or your broader Cisco contract to include certain hardware components in there as well. So it gives you that option. Again, your workflow can be configured to say, hey, you know what? I'm never going to have any hardware reside on a software contract. So if I'm creating a software contract, do not show me this task or delete this task. And again, you're just pulling this task out of the flow and saving it, right? So that's highly configurable. We're not going to get into that. So I'm gonna close this task as a skipped task. So I'll just say, there is no hardware associated to this contract, right? I'm going to put that in. I'm just going to close task. Okay, and now it'll spit out the next task, which is to select your software entitlements. So this may go to an asset manager, someone who has a little bit more visibility on the use of the software to determine whether or not it's even worth moving those software licenses into the new contract. There may be, limited use. There may be no use at all. There may be there may have been an application remediation activity that took place that says this application, it's just no longer approved in certain departments, for example, right? So this is an opportunity for you to really, minimize the financial value and maximize the operational value of going through this exercise. So I can see here that there's 4 entitlements that we added with the original contract. Right? And now we want to see whether it makes sense to move these 4 onto the new contract. So we'll say, yep, you know what, we want to keep all of them. We want to renew everything. Or I can say, hey, this one department, and I can bring in the department data here as well. So I can edit this and I can say, hey, show me the departments. So that would actually be in software entitlement. And now if I search for departments, or let's actually just look through it. So that's department here. Right. So let's have a look at that. So I can see, for example, for whatever reason, the development team has some licenses. I don't want them to be renewed because development, it was ordered in error. We don't want to keep paying for something we made a mistake once. We're not going to do it again. Right. So I'm just going to remove that entitlement record from here, and I'm going to go close task. Right. So I just want those 3 records going in there. The next task pops up, terms and conditions. And the neat thing here is that if, let's say, for example, the head of strategic sourcing wants to have a look and see where all their contracts are and what stage they're in. So they may see that something's actually active, but they want to see where the bottlenecks are. So they can see, hey, 3 of these tasks were completed, and I can do some telemetry. I can see when the task was created all the way down to the date and time, when it was closed. So you can start to see whether you're adhering to your SLAs as well. So there's all sorts of reporting that can come out of this activity as well. But here I'm required to build some terms and conditions. Again, this may go to your contract manager. It may actually go to someone in legal, right? And it may or may not be relevant based on the value of the contract. So again, I can define those parameters, such as the value of the contract, the nature of the publisher, the department. You can define whether or not this task even gets triggered. Right? Out of the box, we make them available, but you have the ability to choose what to do with them. So this one we're just going to close the task. We can pretend that the task was never there because it doesn't apply. It's a low dollar value product. Rate cards, think of this as time and material. So maybe like a services contract may have some resources required to, let's say, install the product. You may have someone on the hardware side doing warranty and break fix, and you have predefined rates for labor. Right. So this is, again, we make these tasks available. They're not going to apply to all scenarios. So I'm just going to close this out. We're going to see renewal confirmation. So this will be a sort of like an audit trail or a final confirmation. And this could go to someone more senior in the organization to sign off and say, hey, I can see that someone's gone through all of these exercises. I'm comfortable. I'm going to say yes. I can see that the licenses that are part of the renewal. I can add the cost as well. I can see things that were added or removed over time. I'm just going to close this task. Now, this is an auditable track field. We want someone to actually select renewal here, so that they're not just blindly closing a task. They're actually saying, yep, I actually adhered to this question. I actually said yes to the renewal, and now I'm going to close the task. And that gets time stamped and user stamped as well with whoever was assigned. So now it says we're awaiting renewal approval. So I'm going to go back here. We're just going to refresh this and see, oh, there's no more tasks. So let's update this here as well, and see that this gets updated as well. So we're just going to do save. Now I can click into the contract renewal request, and I can see that approval history tab has popped up. Again, I'm logged in as an admin, so I can accelerate this process here. Otherwise, it would have come to the asset manager or whoever you select as your workflow, part of your workflow, via email, by text message, whatever method of notification you have, and they would be able to go in and approve that request. So now I can see the renewal approval was completed. I can see the approval history here as well. So let's go back and let's update the record to see what the next stage is. Manual purchase order. So now this is actually submitting the renewal purchase order for the product. Because I don't have any automation configured here with my procurement system, it's not going to take the assets that are part of the new contract, and it's not going to automatically send them over into a purchase order request or a shell PO to the new system. So I'm going to have to manually create that here as part of this instance. But here's where you have opportunities for some automation. So I'm just going to go into that open task. I can go through here, or I can simply look at the task that's open here. Click into that task, and I'll just say, submitted PO in the, enter PO system name. Right, so we entered that in here. I'm going to close that task. I'm going to see if there's any new tasks that have been spawned off. No, doesn't look like there's any additional tasks. Let's go back to the request to see if there's anything else here. Let me refresh that to see if there's anything else. Nope, nothing else. So it's completed. The process is complete and done. So now I can go back to the contract record itself. So let's take a couple of steps back to the contract. All right, so I can see that this contract was expiring on the 29th of January 2024. It's now already been renewed. Well, if I want to see, the history of that contract, if I want to see if there's any where the new contract is, I can go into the contract history tab, and I can see how this contract has matured or evolved over time, right? So if I want to now renew this new contract, right, as I get close to the contract anniversary, I can, have the opportunity to trigger the renewal here as I get close to that, and then the same type of exercise continues, and I can track back as far as I want to go. So hopefully this experience shows you, we walk through, both the creation of the contract, the creation of the licenses, the triggering of the workflow, and then a walk through the tasks in the workflow. And we did that all within a half an hour. Obviously, I spoke a lot and explained a lot of things as we were going, but this task typically can be done in a matter of minutes. Once you've gotten familiar with the platform. Contract records, we created it manually. You can import contracts in through bulk import sets from spreadsheets and from other documents. We will be coming out in our near-term release versions with machine learning and OCR capabilities to read contract records, to read contract PDFs and images as well. So more to come on that. We can also integrate with contract management systems to ingest that data in. So if you want to retain your contract manager system of record and have ServiceNow act as the book of reference, so through a one-way integration or even a two-way integration once contracts have been renewed to pump that back into the contract book of record, that's absolutely possible as well. So several different ways to get the data into the platform. That's a conversation for another day. Hopefully you've enjoyed the session. Please reach out to your ServiceNow account team for more information on licensing the product and for more information or customized demos for your organization. Thank you.